Hello, it's Toast Party, and today I'm talking about the new historic ban list and card rebalancing. Without further ado, let's get into the actual list. So, with historic, Tybalt's Trickery is now banned, Memory Lapse is now suspended, Brainstorm is now banned from suspended, and 5 digital-only cards got rebalanced. Davriel's Withering and Davriel's Soulbroker's third ability now only affects target creature an opponent controls. Faithless Agent is now a 2-2 from a 2-1. Sarkhan Wanderer to Shiv's second ability is now a +1 from a +0. Subversive Acolyte now costs 1 black from black and is now a 2-3 from a 2-2, and had a toughness increase from being a human or Phyrexian reduced by 1. So, with the bans and the suspension, Tybalt's Trickery makes sense because in Best of 1, this card is pretty much impossible to deal with if you are not in some form of control or tempo deck and you're able to either remove the Tybalt's Trickery with a hand disruption effect or a counterspell, because then they resolve the spell, get whatever the most unstoppable permanent in the format is, put it onto the field, and this is all done on turn 2. It's an extremely unbalanced deck that, if you are trying to play any non-tempo strategy, basically it kind of breaks the game. Up next, there's Brainstorm moving from suspended to banned. This one makes a lot of sense. Brainstorm was arguably the most powerful card in the historic format when it was legal, and it basically gave blue decks better card selection than any other deck at the table that could be put at the table, which would allow them to either play a better control, combo, or even aggro game than any other deck could. So it makes sense to see this one go. And then finally, there's Memory Lapse. Arguably the most powerful counterspell in the format, and in my opinion, I would argue that it's strictly better than actual counterspell if that were even legal in this format. Because what Memory Lapse does is that it doesn't just counter the target spell for 2 mana, it puts it on top of that owner's library instead of being put it into the graveyard. So instead of it just being a 1-for-1 trade, it is a counterspell that's also a +1. Because your opponent now doesn't just not have that card that they were trying to cast, they also lose their next draw to just get the card back that they cast that you countered with Memory Lapse. So they've now lost 1 card that they should have drawn, and if that card that they had countered wasn't a form of draw effect, then they're sitting in a much worse position than when they initially tried to cast a spell. So it makes sense that they would move this on to suspended, and I suspect that it'll be quickly moved to the ban list. And alright, it should really be done that way. It's a very unhealthy card for the format. And now the part that really got on my nerves. The other parts with Historic made sense. Banning and suspending cards that are unhealthy makes sense. The rebalances, on the other hand, namely with Davriel's Withering and Davriel's Soulbroker. I really could not care less about the 3 other cards getting made slightly better, because from what I know, those cards don't see a lot of play, and making them better doesn't really change much, and only helps the people who pulled those cards. Changing Davriel's Withering and changing Davriel's Soulbroker is basically worse than banning the card, because I redeemed wild cards to get Davriel's Withering, and I pulled Davriel's Soulbroker from my Historic Jumpstart pack. And these cards are changed in a way that means I am not going to play them anymore. Because the main reason these cards even saw play in Historic was in a 2-card combo with Vesperlark, a card that you would have on your own field, that when it hits the yard would reanimate itself because its stat line would change. Because it's perpetually changed, it could reanimate itself and infinitely die, triggering Blood Artist or a Soul Sister effect to gain you infinite life or deal enough damage to kill your opponent. But now that these cards are changed so that they say target creature an opponent controls perpetually gets minus and minus. The cards are essentially put into your binder, but now they don't do anything. They are worse than being banned, because you don't get wild cards back from this. This is extremely agitating to anyone who built this deck and didn't get even any sort of recompense out of this. They should not have done it this way. They should have just banned these cards. Well, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have an excellent day. And if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe.